I think the oldest dog I crate trained was 12. It was a Japanese Spitz, and all it did was bark, 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 bark. Turns out the dog never slept, and he could never actually hit like REM sleep because he's always moving. So when we crate trained him, it turned into a different dog because suddenly this dog went from sleeping in bits and bobs to sleeping a full night, and his anxiety went down so much that the owner was like, holy shit, I wish I'd done this years ago. Welcome to the new episode of She Gets It Done. Make sure to hit subscribe, comment or like. We hope you love this week's episode. Enjoy! Hey guys, welcome to the next episode of She Gets It Done. Today we are covering crate training, quite a big topic that a lot of people struggle with. I think what we're going to cover is why do we crate train and why is it not cruel? When is the crate used commonly? And how do you crate train a dog? So let's dive right into it.
Yeah.
Do you crate your dogs?
I do. And do you crate yours?
Yeah, if you lift my laptop, you can see the crates right behind me there. For the people that are watching on YouTube, I can also see your crates behind you. How old are your dogs?
So Nova is 4 and Ellie is 1. So they are both crate trained and they both are still crated. Ellie more so than Nova because Ellie's a lot younger. Nova is just when we go out because she can get a little bit more wound up if I leave, whereas if she just goes in a crate, she just goes to sleep and she finds it way less stressful. And then Ellie is more, because she's still quite young, sometimes she struggles to settle in the house, so sometimes she'll go for a nap. But mainly it is when we go out as well, and at night she goes in there to sleep as well.
Cool.
And what about you?
My dogs they're gonna turn 6 and 7, I think. I think it's 6 and 7, or they turn 7 and 8. I can't remember, but we still use the crates as well. I think that's one of the questions I get heaps. Oh, when can we stop using the crate? Like, why do you have to? I still use the crates for my dogs every day. But really only for them to sleep in or for special occasions. Like, we even bring the crates camping with us. Like, we have a really big tent for that reason, because it's only us two and the dogs. And we put the crates up there so we can leave the dogs in the tent while we go and shower, or if we go in an Airbnb, there's no way I would leave a dog free roaming in a house that's not mine. So they go in the crate. Then Lennox is terrified of fireworks.
So is Ellie.
He goes in a crate then, and he chooses it too. Like, if he is afraid of something or bad storm, he will run to the crate himself and he'll just go to sleep. Or in the evening, if we're watching TV and it hits like 11 p.m., he's like, oh, I'll see you later, motherfuckers. I'm going to bed. And then sometimes he comes out of the crate and looks at us like, are you putting me to bed now? Because he always gets a cookie. Like, I bake cookies, so I'll show you. It's fun. So I make these cookies, and I do like batch cooking. So I make them like 3 months in advance. So I shared a recipe online, actually, and they're just like chunks of homemade things. And they only get that when they go in their crate. And they'll salivate for it. I think it's just habit. So if we don't put him to bed, he will come and be like, hey, hurry up.
It's my midnight treaty.
Exactly. And you get tucked in with a blanket. It's a really cozy spot, my dog's crates. So yeah, I still use them. I will always use the crates.
My too. So I don't know how she knows, but we hide the Kongs because in our kitchen we've got also the laundry, and we've got the Kongs, and we'll like slyly bring them out, and we'll have the peanut butter, and she won't even be able to see this, but I'll literally get the peanut butter out of the cupboard. I'll open the jar, and I swear she can smell this peanut butter.
Of course, yeah.
She is down the hallway, and if her crate door is not open, she starts pacing, like getting wound up, and then she'll hang around. And because we'll like preempt, like we'll get the Kongs ready, then we'll like, because Ellie used to have a bit of separation anxiety, so we've got a bit of a routine when we leave her.
Yeah.
So we have everything ready to go, and then we put them in, and then we go straight away. We find that's the easiest thing. Anyway, we'll have that ready. We'll start putting our shoes on, and she's just like standing there shaking, like, oh my God. And I'll be like, Nova, do you want to go in your crate? And she's like, oh my God. And then she'll run back and forth between the crate, like, hurry up, can you please give it to me? Like, she has such a good association with her crate that when she gets in there, she gets like a big peanut butter Kong. And same with Ellie. She's here in there.
That's it. And it's just nice. Like my dogs know how to open it themselves as well. Because sometimes the door falls closed because I just have basic wire crates. And if Lenny wants to go in, he knows exactly how to nudge it. So he opens the door and just goes in. So I think that kind of answers a lot instantly of, are crates cruel for dogs? I don't think so. I think they're essential for dogs. And as with anything, I guess you can abuse any type of tool, right? I mean, like, it's definitely cruel to put a dog in a crate for 15, 12 hours without letting him out. Like, yes, that's horrific.
Yeah.
But how most people use a crate, like, because it frustrates the heck out of me when I read that on Facebook. You know, when someone is asking for help, and because the dog is eating half the house, and then people suggest a crate, and then there comes the crate police, like, no, we don't put a dog in a cage.
And where do you think that this idea has come from? Like this whole thing against crates? Like where do people think about this? Like what is their justification?
I think they actually look at it as a cage, like a zoo. They're like, oh, but dogs shouldn't be in a cage. It's sad. I think it must be that. Instead of looking at, like, I look at it as a toddler that has a crib or a baby. You know, you don't just let your baby free roam.
A cot to sleep in.
Yeah, a cot. Yeah, that's it. You put them in there, because if you don't put a year and a half would crawl, eh? they would walk. You don't just let them roam in the middle of the night when you're not paying attention. They might kill themselves, right?
Or fall out of a bed. Like if they just put in a bed when they're really little, they can roll out, hurt themselves, anything.
So to me, it's a safety thing, and I think that's the main reason why you use a crate. It's to keep your house safe, to keep your dog safe.
And also, like, dogs have the maturity level of a baby, right? So you've got to think the same way. They don't have the maturity to make the right decisions. So if you're letting them just free roam willy-nilly, they're going to get up to trouble most of the time, especially puppies. Like, there's so many exciting things in a house. There's cables, there's furniture you can chew, there's things that we can see and we can bark at. People come in the house like, oh, it's fun to, you know, they might like to jump up on people because it's exciting, run in and out of the house, pee on the carpet so I don't have to go outside. There's all those kinds of things to consider as well that a crate can just solve.
I think it really boils down to, I think we said it in the toilet training podcast, dogs need to earn freedom. Like, they don't get, well, they do. This is the problem that people have. They get the whole house as freedom straight away. And that's when all the problems start. That's when the chewing starts and the barking starts and the peeing in the house starts, because the dog is able to do it either because you couldn't keep your eye on the dog, or because, well, there's just so much opportunity. It's too hard for the dog to resist temptation. So what we do is we take temptation away, and this goes for puppies to rescue dogs to older dogs. Like, I think the oldest dog I crate trained was 12. It was a Japanese Spitz, and all it did was bark, 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 bark. Turns out the dog never slept. Well, it slept sometimes, but not a lot, because even at night he would wake up, bark at the possums, run outside, and he could never actually hit like REM sleep because he's always moving. So when we crate trained him, it turned into a different dog, because suddenly this dog went from sleeping in bits and bobs to sleeping a full night, and his anxiety went down so much that the owner was like, holy shit, I wish I'd done this years ago.
I know. I don't know how people live without crates, but also that dog would have just been in a heightened state
All the
It would have
time.
been over-exhausted all the time, and that's that's an issue in itself, is like dogs not being able to settle and relax. Like, it's like us, if we don't get enough sleep, we get all crabby, we can't function properly, we don't always make the best decisions when we're overtired as well. So it's the same with dogs.
Yeah, I guess you can kind of see it like when you have a party at your house, right? You have a house party and you're tired and you want to go to sleep, but you feel uncomfortable because there's still people over there and people are still drinking and they're making noise, so you might doze off and you wake up again and you're like, oh God. And it just gets worse. You know that house party feel, and you just really want to go home, but you can't? Like that. But if you're able to just leave the room and sleep in a bed and close the door behind you, you're fine. You're like, whatever, the party is there. I'm by myself. I feel safe. I'm just gonna go to sleep. And tomorrow we'll drive home. Whatever. Right. I think to me, that's the crate for a lot of dogs.
Absolutely. And it's also really a quite important tool for dogs that might maybe struggle to be by themselves. Like if you've got a dog that's kind of your Velcro dog that follows you around the house all day, which is kind of like what Nova is. She just wants to be with me all the time.
Yeah.
She used to be trained up to be a guide dog, and then she was rejected because of a few things. Obviously, she had only ever been around people all the time, so she's just used to being next to you all the time. So I found at the beginning it was really important just to give her time to be able to go in the crate for a nap, so I can do things, and she doesn't feel like she has to follow me around everywhere. And she's a lot better now. She still gets like to that point where she wants to follow me around the house, but now she'll just go off and sleep somewhere. But she's a lot older now, so she can make better decisions, so she doesn't need that management anymore. Besides when I leave the house, obviously.
And which then in turn prevents major separation anxiety.
Exactly.
So unhealthy for a dog to constantly be with you. It's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, well, it's even things like planning holidays or going out and seeing your friends. If you have a dog that you can't leave at all, it's extremely isolating. If you're going to come home and they've chewed the walls or they've, ripped up your couch or anything, like those are really expensive. That's really expensive to fix as well, let alone just the emotional stress of it as well, which like obviously separation anxiety is a whole thing in itself, but definitely crate could be a potential thing to help, because it's like a little den, it's like a little safe space that the dogs can't get up and pace around and everything. Like all they can do is just go and lie down and go to sleep. So it makes them shut their brains off, rather than, like pacing around the house and wondering where you are, looking at the window, waiting. Oh, there's a car, here a car, run the door. Is that mum? No, that's not. Okay. And then, they repeat that cycle. Yeah, repeat and repeat, which is where the anxiety starts coming on.
And if you have an extreme case, that will go into escaping the house. Jumping fences, jumping through windows, or like obsessively eating things. And that in turn can give you, that can even be for a dog that hasn't got separation anxiety, but just likes to chew shit, Dogs that end up at the vet because they've eaten something that then causes a blockage. Like you could avoid that by putting a dog in a crate because they're safe.
Yeah. Well, Ellie, my youngest, she loves to chew, so she has like really hard chews.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but if I left her unattended when she was a puppy, she would have chewed cables, everything, and she would have got herself electrocuted, or she would have got something blocked in her stomach, and then she would have had to have had surgery. But because we started crate training from the beginning, which actually wasn't an easy process for us, crate training for us. But because we did all of that, she just never learned to do those behaviours either. So she just never did it. So now that she's nearly 2 years old, we can have her kind of around the house hanging out, and we don't have to worry about her going and chewing stuff.
Yeah.
But one of the other things I wanted to talk about with the crate training is there's different types of crates too. So we started Ellie off in your standard crate, and she actually tore the bottom out, and we had to start by like leaving her for 5 minutes at a time, but it just never really progressed anywhere. And she used to get herself so wound up. So there's actually different types of crates too. We've got one that's it's like a black hole base one, but there's no metal on it. And we found as soon as we put that on, because I think it was the rattling of the metal that wound her up as well. So as soon as she was in that one, she was completely fine. So it's even like if your dog doesn't like that crate, don't get deflated.
Exactly.
Different ones that work a bit better for your dog as well. And this one's a little bit darker as well. Like you can also put covers over your crates because some dogs like to be completely in the dark.
Yeah.
But this one, it's a lot quieter, and she's been successfully like crate trained for like a year. I think it's very rare that we have an issue ever. It's usually because something else is going on that might cause her to have a bit of stress, but it's not her being in the crate itself.
Yeah. It's actually, it's funny you said that, because that reminded me when we had to fly Lennox to New Zealand, we had to obviously get a travel crate for him that was airline approved, but those plastic crates, that just did not float with him. He got so aggressive in those if you tried to pick it up, which is obviously he needs to be picked up. Get onto the plane. So we had to get him, we call him his Hannibal Lecter crate, and it's like this massive wooden crate that you think you travel like a zoo animal in, but he was so chill in that, so that's sometimes what a dog needs. You need to look around. There's some really good impact crates, but they cost something. But just because your dog doesn't like a wire crate doesn't mean you give up the process.
Exactly. But also, even though the impact crate might be a bit more expensive, is it more expensive to replace a couch constantly, surgeries, all of that kind of stuff?
Very true. Yeah.
And it's also, if you're really not sure, you can ask a trainer as well. Like people can come in and help you. Otherwise, there's plenty of videos out there. I don't know if you've got any that you would specifically recommend.
Not yet.
No, but like there are some good ones out there. I think that Learberg, it's a website people can look up. I think there might be a crate training one on that. But there's definitely professional help. You shouldn't just go chucking your dog in the crate. Like, do it properly. But the other thing is the size of the crate as well. People can sometimes get too small of a crate that the dogs aren't comfortable. Like I like to get a decent one that my dogs can stretch out.
Yeah, there is a lot of talk about that. Hey, this whole you need to get a crate and then a divider because otherwise the dog has too much space in the crate. I've never done that.
No, I've never had a problem with it. If
I've always gotten the biggest crate possible for the dog that wasn't like outrageously stupid. And the dogs have just always been good in those crates.
Yeah.
I feel like like mine have pillows and blankets and all kinds of stuff in there. Like it's really comfy. It doesn't have to be, well, here's your metal crate and you have to lie on the plastic baseboard. Like, oh, that's not nice. Unless the dog rips everything up, then yes.
Well, that's one of my dogs. So Ellie, so she likes to chew. So she used to chew like beds and stuff. So she's just got older blankets. But again, it's all packed up in there. Yeah. She likes it. She likes to ruffle it up and make it into a den. Nova has a bed and her blanket. So she's got a bit more like padding in hers.
Yeah.
But again, they're both comfortable, but it's just one has kind of earned to have that bed because she hasn't ripped it up, whereas the other one will rip it up. So
I think Zelda's ripped up like 4 beds, and at some point we were like, well, that's it then. You don't get a bed anymore. And we got her a duvet from Kmart for kids, and we just folded that a few times, and she's happy as Larry with that. She's just like, okay, cool. I'll struggle in that.
Yeah. Exactly.
And we got her a pillow, and she's okay with the pillow, but she doesn't like a bed. Oh, that's okay.
I think Ellie's a little bit the same. I think she actually just likes being able to ruffle it up, but the bed can't do that. So what she does is she grabs it with her mouth, and then it rips, and she's like, "Oh, that was quite fun. Oh, I'll just climb all the stuffing." So I think just the blanket. So there's all these different things that you can do to figure out how
it's not dog like.
It's not always super straightforward, but you can find things that your dog likes.
Yeah. And then I think another important one is placement of the crate. where do you put the crate in the house? So don't put it in the middle of the living room.
No.
So mine are in the garage now because that's my dog room. Before we moved, they got the spare room. You guys also have it in the spare room, hey?
Yeah, we've got it in Jordan's office, my partner's office, yeah. And we used to have one in the lounge, but we didn't really have anyone coming and going. But we didn't really want it in there because, like, you know, you do get the odd person. We didn't like our dogs being disturbed, like when people, like when we had a flatmate come and go or something like that. So that's why we ended up moving them down here, and they're a lot more settled in this room because people don't come.
That's it. I feel like when you have a party or event at your house and you have the dog in the crate in the living room, it's impossible. And it's, you know, even I always say to people, crate training while you're at home is so much harder than if you actually leave the house. Even if you just go sit in your car for 10 minutes. So the dog knows that you're not home. It's like if I put Lennox in a crate now, whilst I sit here, he'll probably start crying until I let him out. Because that's just the kind of dog he is. He'll be like, ooh, 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 you know? Whereas, and Zelda would be fine, but she'd probably bark a few times. But if I was not in the room, he'd be fine.
Yeah, it's just the senior and the FOMO. My dogs are in the crates at the moment, but they kind of get a mixture because they're just used to it because my partner works from home. So they've kind of gone in and out. But I think it's also important, especially at the beginning with people, especially if you have a dog that is a bit more attached, is to make an effort to pop them in for a bit when you're doing stuff around the house, and then you let them out, and then you put them in, then you go out. So they don't always associate as soon as you put them in the crate, you're leaving. Like just have a generalized idea that sometimes I'm in there when mum's home, but she's not doing anything with me, and then sometimes I'm in here and she goes out, but she comes back.
It's so important to do that so that the crate doesn't become this, oh my God, I only go in here when you leave.
Yeah, and then that makes an anxiety in itself as well.
Yeah.
That was a big thing, and especially when we were retraining Ellie in the crate once we got that crate. Like we did it with the other crate, but that just wasn't working. But we did it with this one, as we actually ended up having like longer stints of her just being in there, just so she just got used to just being in there. We gave her heaps of like enrichment toys and well, not even so much toys, like bone, like
just something to chew,
and all that kind of stuff. And then she's just like, oh, it's just a spot I go to sleep. That's it. And she chooses to go in there. First, if she's ever insecure, she goes there straight away. That's her safe space. She's like, nothing happens there. Like if there's like fireworks that randomly go off, she's like, oh, she goes to her crate because that's just her safe space.
Yeah, nice. So what would you say, how would you train a dog that doesn't know the crate? And that might be puppy or rescue dog or whatever dog. I feel like I trained it the same no matter what age the dog is.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I think it's just you just spread out the process, like you break down the steps like for longer periods depending on the dog. Some dogs take to it like within 5 seconds and they really don't, like, not that you jump all those steps that quickly, but you know, some just go in there and they get it. Some are a little bit unsure. So I always do usually especially if I've got the metal crate, I just start with like throwing treats in and getting them in there, and then once the treats are done they can come out, but then they get no reinforcement otherwise, and then I'll just keep putting them in there, and then I'll repeat that over and over again until kind of the dog is almost offering to go into the crate, because they know that if I go in there I get food. But the main thing is you don't feed them outside of it as well, because then they're like, oh, you know.
Which honestly can go so fast. This might sound like it takes a lot of reps, but honestly, if you toss a few treats, and I toss them in, so it's like, oh, go catch it kind of thing. And honestly, the dog starts preempting you so fast. They're like, oh, if I go in it, then I'll get another treat.
Yeah, and sometimes if I can't quite throw it in far enough, I'll like drop it through the top.
Yeah,
I have to go like right in. And so what we do is I do that. So I just get them used to kind of going in and out. And then what I'll do is I'll do like a bigger drop of food in there. And then while they're all in there, I'll hold the crate door shut. As soon as they've finished it, I open the door up again, and then they're like, oh, okay. And then they'll come out again. And then they'll want to go straight back in. And then while they're doing that, then I might latch the doors. And then again, once they've finished it, then I'll open it back up, and then they come back out. And then you just build up to maybe then you could get things that last a bit longer, and then you can shut it and just kind of sit around while they're finishing it. And then once they're done, you go, oh, okay. And then you might wait a little bit after they've finished it, not to open it straight away. As long as they're not getting like wound up about it, like you figure out like how comfortable they are. Usually they don't really care, to be honest. Like once they've got association, they don't really care once they've finished the chew if you haven't opened it up straight away anyway.
So do you always use high value treats then? Or something that takes quite a while?
Nah, sometimes I'll use their biscuits. If it's like a really unsure dog, like that they've been really like they're just really nervous to kind of go in, then I might use a higher reward. But most dogs, if they like their normal like kibble or something, I'll just get owners to use that, because I'm like, well, then you don't have to overfeed them as well. So you can use their dinner for training.
Yep.
And then I'll work on, once they've got that, then while they're finishing like a chew or something, I'll walk down the hallway, and then I'll come back and they've finished it. And then you just work on leaving them for longer and longer. And then once they're the other thing I find quite helpful is actually crating them overnight, even in the process of crate training, because I don't know about you, but I don't find dogs are too bothered about sleeping in a crate overnight, even if they're not necessarily crate trained.
During the day?
Yeah. Especially if they're already in the room with you, like if they're in the room that you sleep in, if you have a crate in there. Sometimes I find doing that as well during the night, putting them in there, they usually just go to sleep.
Yeah, for me, sleep time is just, you need to go in, I close the door, I'm going to sleep.
Yeah.
That sounds really cruel. I mean, if it's a puppy, I'll get up to make sure they can go toilet and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
But if it's an adult dog that can hold itself, you're in there during the night, we're going to sleep now.
And I find I don't really have an issue with that. Like I can continue the crate training during the day while leaving, but at night they just seem to be kind of like, okay, I'll just go to sleep. And I find that's a really good way just to train them to be in there for longer without really having to put any effort in, because they just go to sleep anyway. Because
that's it. It's not fun. And then sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it.
So I find that I usually say to people, so start with your process, toss the treats in, then start closing the door, then start walking away, come back, and I just keep tossing treats in at the top. I don't let them out every time I come back.
That's a good point.
At the point that I'm like, oh, they're quite comfortable now. I just come back, toss treats in, and I walk off again. And then I say to people, now go do a task. Go fold the laundry in a different room, and when you're done with that, come back to the dog. Let them out. Or go have a shower. Or go cut the vegetables for dinner. Or whatever. Go and do something that takes the focus off your dog, so you're not like staring at the crate.
Waiting for them.
Exactly. Because your dog will start whining. And if you give in to that whine, you're done.
Yeah. And it's not that they're stressed about being in there. It's just that
you just don't want to be in there. Yeah.
How would you troubleshoot in the middle of, you've just started your crate training, like they've got to the point, they've probably been in there for like 5-10 minutes and it's going really well, and then the owners start hearing the whining and they start getting a bit worried.
What I usually say to people is don't go back until the dog is at least quiet for 10 seconds. So if they go, woo, wait for that break and then go back. Either reward or let them out. It's up to you, right? Yeah. But I think it's so important to know that if you let your dog out when they whine, they know if I do this, I'm going to be let out. So the next time they're going to whine longer because they're like, hold on, this worked the last time. So I'm just going to try longer and maybe they'll come back again, which then just turns into such a shit fest of your dog figuring out, this is how I get out. And this is when people say, yeah, I had to give up on crate training because it doesn't work. My dog doesn't like it. Like, I don't care that the dog doesn't like it. I don't like my furniture being chewed. So guess who is the loser here? The dog.
Yeah, and half the time I don't even think it's that they don't like the crate. They just can't. They just
apart
want
from
to
you.
be in and whatever you're doing, and you've left them behind. And they can't follow you. I don't think it's even so much that they're like, "Oh my god, I'm stuck in this crate and I can't go anywhere." It's like, "Oh, well, you've left me."
I mean, I do think I'm a bit of the old school way because I do believe in cry it out. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's so mentally traumatizing to the dog. And maybe it is, but I don't know. I do believe it with kids as well, like sleep training. Some people believe in sleep training, others like to cry it out. Like, that's like a topic that we might not discuss. But just like in general, I find if you let a puppy cry or a dog cry there for 10, 15 minutes, after that, they stop.
Because it didn't work.
Yeah, they're like, up to half an hour, I'd be fine with it. Like, it's a problem if the dog escalates and it gets worse and worse, and you can start hearing banging, and the dog is like in a panic trying to get out, then obviously you need to do something. But if it's just attention, barking, and whining, and we know that bark, it's a certain bark your dog does.
That little sad, like little half cry.
Yeah, or the really shrill one where they go, you know, it's like, you're fine. You're just attention seeking.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do say to people, put some noise cancelling headphones on and just carry on what you're doing. And the dog will learn that you don't come back. And then the moment they're quiet for a bit, that's like, good job, buddy. Now you can come out. They just need to know that the whining doesn't work.
And I think as well, if you have a dog that's practiced, you know, these behaviours for years, I feel like it can be a little bit harder because they've just been used to pacing,
totally
wound up. So then teaching them that they have to switch off their brain, that can be really difficult for them. Whereas I think when people train right from the beginning, like as soon as they got their puppy home, like this is it, this is all it is, it's not so hard. So you might find like one dog was really difficult to crate train because you did it when they were like 3 years old and they've had like all this history of chewing up your couch or barking and stuff, and it's taking you a while, but then you'll get another dog and you'll start straight from the beginning and then you have no problems.
That's it. And, you know, also think about some practical uses. If you have to bring your dog away to a kennel when you go on holiday, do you think your dog is going to let out because it's crying a little bit? No. If it goes to the vet for the whole day because they're waiting for an operation, or they're in a crate and they're not going to be let out just because they're crying. Like, I don't know if you ever been at the vet, but I've sometimes heard dogs howling. And that could be for lots of reasons. It doesn't have to be for the crate itself. But I think it's cruel if you don't train your dog to be crate trained at all and then put them in a situation like that.
Yeah. Especially if you are going away on holidays, because even if you're going with like more of a board and train trainer style, most of them crate